You are anxious right now. Maybe not dramatically. Maybe not in a way anyone would notice. But somewhere in your body, there is tension. A tightness in your shoulders, a quickened breath, a thought that will not fully leave. And your baby knows, not because they are perceptive in the way a perceptive adult is perceptive, not because they read your face or interpret your behavior. They know because their biology is wired directly into yours. Because the stress your nervous system is running right now is being transmitted to them through mechanisms so precise and so measurable that researchers have spent the last 2 decades struggling to fully explain how early it begins and how deep it goes. This video is not about guilt. Parents who are anxious are not failing their babies. Anxiety is not a character flaw. It is a biological state that happened to you, shaped by genetics, experience, and a world that demands more than any human nervous system was designed to handle. But understanding what is actually passing between you and your baby changes something. It changes how you interpret their behavior. It changes how you think about your own, and it opens a door to something the research calls co-regulation, one of the most powerful tools available to any parent that most parents never hear about. Here is where it starts. Your baby was born without the ability to regulate their own stress. This is not a developmental delay. This is the design. The structures in the brain responsible for emotional regulation, the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, the orbitofrontal regions, are among the last to mature. They will not be fully functional for another 2 decades. What the baby has instead is you. From the moment of birth, your baby's nervous system is oriented toward yours. Your heartbeat is the rhythm theirs learned to follow in the womb. Your breathing rate becomes the model their breathing attempts to mirror. Your cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone circulating in your blood, directly influence theirs. This is not metaphor. This is biochemistry. During pregnancy, cortisol crosses the placental barrier. Studies measuring cortisol in amniotic fluid have found that maternal cortisol levels and fetal cortisol levels are correlated as early as the second trimester. The baby is not just aware of your stress, they are chemically sharing it months before they are born. After birth, the transmission continues through different pathways. One of the most direct is cortisol in breast milk. Research published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology has found measurable correlations between a breastfeeding mother's stress levels and the cortisol concentration in the milk she produces. Babies who consume higher cortisol milk show elevated stress responses of their own, not because the milk is harmful, but because their biology is reading the chemical information it contains. But the transmission does not require physical transfer of hormones. It happens through something far more immediate. The face. Your baby's primary source of information about the world is your face, not the world itself, not their own sensory experience. Your face. By 6 weeks old, infants are scanning their caregiver's face with a specificity that rivals sophisticated facial recognition software. They are reading the micro-expressions, the tiny, involuntary movements of muscles around your eyes, your mouth, your brow, that you are not even aware you are making. When you are anxious, your face changes in ways you cannot fully control. The corrugator muscle between your brows contracts slightly. The muscles around your eyes tighten. Your mouth draws inward. These are not dramatic expressions. They are micro-signals. But to your baby's scanning system, they are broadcasting a very specific message. Something is wrong. And here is what makes this remarkable. Researchers at University College London found that babies as young as 5 months old could distinguish between a relaxed face and a face carrying concealed tension, a face whose owner was trying to appear calm. The babies responded to the concealed tension, not the performed calm, the hidden signal. Your baby is reading what you are actually feeling, not what you are showing them. This feeds into a system researchers call the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. It is the body's primary stress regulation system, the biological machinery that decides when to release cortisol and when to stand down. In the first years of life, The HPA axis is still being calibrated, and the single most powerful variable in that calibration is the emotional environment provided by the primary caregiver. Babies whose primary caregiver has chronically elevated stress levels, not occasional anxiety, not the ordinary stress of parenthood, but sustained, unmanaged, high baseline anxiety, show measurably altered HPA axis development. Their own stress response systems become tuned differently. They release more cortisol in response to stressors. They take longer to return to baseline. They are, in the language of the research, more reactive. This is not destiny. It is not irreversible, but it is real, and it begins earlier than almost anyone outside the research community knows. Now, here is what most people miss when they encounter this information. They hear it as an accusation, as evidence that anxious mothers are damaging their babies, and that reading is not only unkind, it is scientifically inaccurate. The research is not saying that anxiety transmits damage. The research is saying that nervous systems transmit states, and that transmission goes in both directions. This is where co-regulation becomes the most important concept in this conversation. Co-regulation is what happens when one nervous system helps another nervous system find calm. It is the biological foundation of every comforting interaction between parent and child. When you pick up a crying baby and your own body is calm, when your breathing is slow, your heartbeat steady, your muscles relaxed, their cortisol drops, their heart rate stabilizes, their breathing sinks to yours. You are not just comforting them, you are lending them your regulation until they can generate their own. Dr. Stephen Porges, the neurophysiologist who developed what is now called Polyvagal Theory, has described this as neuroception, the nervous system's unconscious detection of safety or danger in the environment. Your baby's nervous system is continuously engaged in neuroception, reading the sounds, movements, and physiological signals of the people around them, asking one question on a loop: am I safe? And the single most powerful answer to that question is a regulated caregiver. This creates something counterintuitive. The most effective thing you can do for an anxious baby is not to manage the baby's anxiety. It is to manage your own, not suppress it, not perform calm you do not feel, but actually access it, even briefly, even partially, because your nervous system does not have to be perfectly calm to co-regulate. It just has to be calmer than the baby's. Here is the practical reality of this. There is a moment, you have been there, when your baby is screaming and you are exhausted and your anxiety is spiking and your body is tight and everything in you wants the crying to stop. And the harder you try to soothe them, the more your tension transmits and the more they cry. What is happening in that moment is two dysregulated nervous systems trying to calm each other down. And it does not work. It cannot work, because the signal you are broadcasting, the tightened face, the elevated breathing, the cortisol in your system, is telling them the same thing their own biology is telling them. This is not safe. The solution is not to be a better parent in that moment. The solution is to regulate first, even 30 seconds, a slow exhale, a deliberate loosening of the shoulders, a brief pause before you pick them up again. Enough to shift your own nervous system out of the threat response. Not all the way into calm, but enough to change the signal you are transmitting. Because when the signal changes, the baby responds, almost immediately. Not because you said the right thing or did the right technique, because their neuroception detected something different. It detected that the most important person in their world had shifted from threat to safety. And that shift is the most powerful communication available between a parent and a child. Researchers studying the long-term effects of this have found something that should be kept close to every anxious parent's heart. The babies who do best, who develop the most secure attachment, the most resilient stress responses, the strongest emotional regulation, are not the babies whose parents had low anxiety. They are the babies whose parents, however anxious, had the capacity to repair, to notice when they had transmitted too much, to come back, to find calm even after the storm, to sit with their baby in the quieter moment, and let the nervous system reset. The transmission of anxiety is not the damage. The inability to return to regulation is what leaves a mark, which means that every parent who has had a hard day and a tight chest and a crying baby and has found their way back to calm, who has taken a breath and softened and reached for their child differently, has done exactly what the research asks of them. Not perfection, return. Not calm at every moment, calm enough to come back. Your anxiety is not a wall between you and your baby. It is something that moves through the space between you, and the moment you understand that, you can begin to work with it rather than against it. You can breathe before you pick them up. You can acknowledge the state rather than fight it. You can learn the specific signals, the sounds, the smells, the sensations that shift your own nervous system toward calm, because your baby does not need you to be unafraid. They need you to be present, to keep coming back, to be the nervous system they borrow until they can build their own. And that is something that anxiety, as real as it is, does not have to take from you. Subscribe to Baby Mind Secrets for weekly videos on the hidden science of what your baby is feeling, building, and learning in every ordinary moment. And tell us in the comments, have you ever noticed your baby picking up on your stress? A moment where your anxiety seemed to reach them before you even realized you were anxious? We read every one.